Well, I was saying that I'm really happy with what the deep dive is doing, the strong results with a lot of people. I met a lady this weekend who shared with me that, well, the impact that it had, and first of all, the closeness that she had experienced. She said, I didn't know it was possible, but it felt like we were in the same room every time. Well, that's a good start. That's how we're gonna do it also now. So I'm sure, since it was a requirement that you practice the deep dive, at least some of it, and we're going to use that as a foundation to explore further the principles of the deep dive, but also then to see what we can, how we can link it to alchemy and bodywork, because that's what it is. The deep dive is like a fusion between alchemy of bodywork and inner alchemy. Over the years, there's been so many people that ask me, how does it come that what you do, what you teach, or when you give a treatment, that it has such a deep impact? And most of the time, that was not a question of somebody who really wanted to know it, but some people really want to know it. And that is all about the inner alchemy process. If the inner alchemy works through the touch, the weaker this inner alchemy state is, which is simply a consciously being present state, the more we start to depend on what we do in the touch. While in deeply conscious touch, there is no movement. Even if you adjust somebody's spine or do a friction treatment, whatever kind of treatment, but inside her, the stillness remains. There is a big need for people who can do this. Certainly in these days, right? And I'm not going to talk a lot about the C letter, but still, what we see, I heard something very interesting from Professor Matthias de Smet, who said the difference between the current hypnosis state that our society is in and a normal hypnosis session is that normally the hypnotist is not in the trance himself. And that is quite unique now in our society. So a lot of people are in this hypnosis, but the ones who brought them in the hypnosis are in the hypnosis themselves. So that's that's quite tough. But the good news is, when we start to rely on our own roots and find our body connection with the earth again, grounding the soul into the body, then we contribute to the maximum, to a supporting light that can change this situation. It also brings us to the place of where we can possibly contribute, whatever you have to do. Well, over the last years, I've been struggling in writing a book about alchemy or bodywork. I think I started 7 years ago. Or I once had 50 pages, and now I have 15 again. Because every time I came to the point like that is describing what alchemy or bodywork is. It's not alchemy or bodywork. Then through the deep dive, it came as close as possible. But then still, people will ask me then, yeah, okay, now we know how it works and we can go into the state. Doesn't mean I can do it while I'm at my job or when I treat a person or when I'm together with my beloved one. And that's true. One is more static, the other one is dynamic. So that's why I got to these mystical texts. And this is not something I invented, of course. It's a very old way of transmitting the message of alchemy. If you look at in the Western tradition, the Hermetic Science and the Kybalion, which is one of the oldest texts. If you read it, you can read what they say, all is in the mind, and so on and so on. Very clear, but it doesn't mean anything. Well, you understand all is in the mind, or in the Tao Te Ching, when you read the text, it's like written by an 8-year-old or something. But it's not. It requires that you come into a certain state before you can pick up the information. That's why it's done like that. If it can be caught by the analytical mind, then you never get it. And so the Tao that can be told is not the real Tao. That is one of the most famous quotes of how is it called? Lao Tzu. Yeah, that's true. So that's why I decided to do it this way. And that means I open for the fields. It's like a slight intention. Oh, you're right. In a few months, we have this coming up. So I put this intention into the fields, and then the sentences and the themes start to come up. This is how I created the text. And then I share the text, and from sharing the text, people start to read it or receive it, and it does all kind of stuff into the mind. And then through that, I start to pick that up, not by thinking about it, but I start to pick up information, and then I get all kind of input, ideas of how we could, experience that. So certainly in the last 2 days, I've been writing some things down. I feel really like a little bit crazy professor then, who was like, oh my God, I'm really excited. And but it's not that is what I want to do. It's like all kind of possibilities. So we're going to explore the text further and then have experiences on the text. But the most important thing is how you guys are present. Listening is just one thing, of course. So it's really important that you listen like you're in the vital darkness with this inner space being awakened. And I can feel that's already starting to happen. It was good that I pointed it out. That made a little difference. But if you listen too much to the sound in your ear and the pictures and so, you're not going to get it. So the possible harvest of what we do is that it helps you to experience the deep dive and parts of the body and aliveness in a new way for you. And since in the world that we are practicing, the dimensions that we are practicing, if you have experienced it, that is forever. It's not like, oh, now I tried it and now I have to learn it and so on. No, if you will enter it, you have to know then that this is a door that has opened. And you just relax because then it's open. This wall does not come back. The mind and the ego, certainly the ego will tell you, oh, the Dirk is not there and so on. Well, some of you are 3,000 kilometers away. I'm going to be on the same distance tomorrow. So that's not making any influence. You're just experiencing the field. I'm giving you a little help. And of course, there is these 6 sessions. So they will form a whole, of course. And there will be an evolution. My feeling is I'm pretty sure that it will, if you start to do it on your own body and also on other people, which I strongly advise you, then it will create quite a change in your ability to touch, in the depth of your touch. So even if you're not a body worker, I don't care, but I'm sure you have some people who would like to be touched in this way. If you don't have that, that maybe then that is the priority in your life. Because this is very needed. So if that was not your plan, you don't have to do it tonight. Some of you have somebody with you in the room and you can at a certain point work with this person, it's fine. But also people get the recordings, right? But you get the recordings so you can take certain parts out and use the audio while you're touching this other person. So train with it. It's not so much something you repeat over and over and over, like certainly the first 2 stages of the deep dive, but it will be definitely worthwhile to repeat certain parts. For sure, the text itself. I already told this to in Dutch, but we have another room here, we did with 4. So it creates already like a nice dynamic, nice energy. You need to drink a little bit sometimes. I started to sound suspiciously corona the last days, which was not. That's maybe interesting to know also. We had a 5-day Alchemy Bodywork class. And I remember the moment actually that happened. It was more like an elemental that was released from somebody's body. And as I had mentioned in the course, people can release extremely strong stuff. If you don't resonate with that, if you don't have any resonance with that kind of pain inside of you, it doesn't have any effect on you. If you're in the alignment between heaven and earth. So that's good news. If you do have some karmic residue or something, like I had around the team, then it will hit you. And that's also good news, right? Because then you can use the release of this person to wake something up that was in your subconsciousness. And that created for me some coughing and fever and stuff. It's very good. But good to remember that if you're treating people on a regular basis, not really a need to protect yourself from negative influences, but also be realistic to know that you're going to be hit sometimes. I mean, I hope so. If you attract the right people, then you will attract people that also come to help you and confront you so that you can grow. So that's important in the process. And that's the cough you will hear sometimes. So let me start by, and maybe you can read, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So I will read the audio or the text you already received in audio form. So if you want, you can close your eyes or you can really sink in and you can feel the words. Touch is purely experiencing aliveness. It proves that I am. Just let go of the one who is touching, the one who is touched, the one who is experiencing the touch. Your sense of time in touch, the one who calls it touch. The illusion of who touches and who is being touched. Because in pure touch, there is only one being, one I. No you, but only I. Being, one being. Being is the touch of life, the eternal touch of God, reminding us why we are here, living the oneness in duality.
Thank you. That was very helpful. So I want to start with these two first sentences. Touch is purely experiencing aliveness. It proves that I am. There is a lot of stuff inside there. This is quite a mysterious thing. I don't know if you realize that. We talk about touch. What beep is that? Because we all know, I touch my finger, I touch the person next to me, I got touched. But what does that mean? It's good to reflect on this for yourself. Do you really know what touch is? Consciously know what touch is? We all know that it is one of the five senses, right? Tast, we say in Dutch. But true touch is so much more than that. And that is true for all the senses. The five senses can be brought together into conscious perceiving or consciousness, but they form like the five external gates. Touch has a special function for modern people because we are pretty far away from it. We started to use touch as a tool. We call in Flemish it's zintuigen, senses in English, and that has a lot of truth inside because senses. That means it has to make sense. It can help you to let things make sense or not, right? More than a beetje dichter. Okay. So when we do it, when we don't use, so the senses in themselves are possibilities to experience life. Is that right? Check for yourself. Possibilities to experience life. They're not good or bad, but it's an extreme gift that we have received. And without these senses, we would be quite helpless, right? So they're very valuable, and but we have to learn to use them in the right way. That is the whole thing. And that's what most of the people are not really doing. Because just like I described in the deep dive, most of the senses in our lives is under the control of the I mind, which is, we call it consciousness, but that's nothing more than I am conscious of what I do and I am conscious of my thought. It's always too late. It comes out, I do it. I'm always behind the facts. There is no true authority there. Nothing wrong with that, because when we talk about touch, the most primitive layer of the touch is to define our place in time-space. That's necessary. If I would do that, I wouldn't say to Davy it's not close or close enough. If I would walk on the wall instead of through the hole of the door, I would have a difficulty to put the food in my mouth. And I would always be there on the wrong moment. So time, space, three-dimensional is like a basic security that we need. But the touch we need for that is very instinctive. There is not so much consciousness in it. There's a lot of consciousness in it, but in our sub and unconsciousness. I'm sure you guys understand it. This would sound really strange for somebody who has not heard me talking before. But you got used to being conscious about the unconscious, right? That's why the deep dive is all about. So these superficial layers of touch are just the foundation that makes sure that I'm in the right place in the right moment. And if I get impulses through my eyes, but also through physically touching something, then, oh, okay, it gives me the right information. As you know, if you didn't hear or see, then, and you needed to crawl, that would change your reality, but you would still have some idea of the environment. Much more instinctive and much more primitive. You would be more like half caterpillar or mouse or something, that kind of sense. But that is how, that's an instinctive part that is not the range of our consciousness and how we can use touch in a conscious way. And then it becomes interesting. Most people have never really explored that. The moment that they start to go deeper into touch, they have a fraction of it. That means something happens, they have a love experience with somebody, and it's pure in that moment, and then very soon it will start to make it emotional because they start to reflect on it. The first one is a pure soul-body experience. What that comes after is an emotion projection, hoping this is going to last because it was much better than the suffering from before. Okay? That is not pure again. So learning to have this touch consciously, what we need to do then is to become aware of our attachment to dualism in the way we touch and the way we are in touch. And I'm assuming then that you are in dualism. I'm sure the deep dive has already changed that quite a lot. But as I said before, most of us, we got that was a good one, attached, I mean, to this kind of dualistic touch. And even if we treat the person, most therapeutic work is extremely based on that duality. I'm the one touching, you're the one who's being touched, right? If you don't believe me, next time you go to your therapist, start touching him. Then you will know. Probably you might be kicked out. So, no, that is not the agreement. It's a one-way thing, and this tool needs to be there. But in the first sentence, when I say if we are purely experiencing aliveness, it means that the duality, the two in the touch becomes one. Some of you have done that maybe. If you would put one person on the floor and I put my finger on the person's hand and I stay very still, most of the time, certainly if there's conscious presence, within 30 seconds, the person doesn't know that you feel anymore, that you touch anymore, sorry. And you can do it even with stronger touch. After a while, they don't know anymore. It can remind you to the feeling that you're laying next to your beloved one on bed. If you come from a deep sleep, the only way to be sure is by opening your eyes or when you move, right? You know what I mean? You lay so close and still, very still breathing out. Come from a deep sleep. You don't feel your shape, your form body anymore. You're so one. How do you know where you are? Oh, then you move your leg. Oh, okay, now it starts to make sense. I'm in my bed, I'm sleeping like that, right? Right. But before that, you don't know. And it scares the shit out of most people. This is why we go very fast from total unconscious to conscious in my dualistic reality again. So to know where I am attached That is why the second part of the text is all about, and we're going to practice that more. But still at the first two lines, when I say it proves that I am, is when this experience, sorry, when this touch is happening, what makes it so special is that it is in the physical experience. In that moment, even if you do it 100 times on a different place, every time you will notice it. Every time you will know. If you keep it there, it's something else. But if there's movement there, every time you will notice it. Every time it's like the life is coming from the outside inside of you. This is a response from the nervous system. That's one thing. But if we can relax in this response, then it opens the aliveness inside us. Does that mean we don't have touch in our subtle bodies? No. But that kind of touch is very, very different. I want to challenge you a little bit into this. Maybe go back to a very vivid, alive dream you had recently. Oh, Dick, but I was touched there. Maybe you made love with somebody, or you had this strong experience, or you got in a violent thing, and so on. I assure you that you have experienced this emotionally. But check for yourself, it's not physically. You don't experience it in your physical body. Otherwise, you wouldn't be dreaming. Right? Are you still with me on this? So we have these experiences even in our noetic body, even further in a very subtle mind body. We can have these experiences of touch. Let me put it differently. There is no duality in the psychic, in the psychic body and dimension. What is separate as an entrance in the third dimension starts from the same space in the fourth dimension. So touch becomes something very, very differently. We don't have to come from duality to oneness. We can start from the direct experience in the psychic body. And that state of at-one-ment is even much stronger even in the fifth dimension. So there is touch, but it's not physical. So then, why do we love touch so much? Because it gives us a pure individual sign of aliveness. If I put my hand on the person next to me, it's not, I cannot say, oh, I feel the energy, maybe he meant it for me. It's very clear. The touch is from here to there. It happens in your body. Right? And we love that. It gives us a feeling when we are present, when we can receive this touch. Not knowing, because that's the conditions we put in there. We can purely receive this touch. It's like heaven comes into earth and the aliveness awakens inside of you. This is really crucial for people in existence. We are all a bit addicted to it. But we also took more and more distance, and the whole C stuff put us even social distancing and all of that. Well, made that much, much worse. But we love that. We really need that. It makes sense. If people are not touched, then they start to lose sense. Like, it becomes senseless. That is, the senses start to work on a very superficial, sometimes even underworld layer. It doesn't make sense anymore. Person gets suicidal or something. Same senses, but they use it now in a very destructive way, and they feel isolated. Right? I have never heard of somebody who wants to kill himself when he's in total connectedness. You have to feel isolated, lonely, senseless, useless, lonely. That, right? Otherwise, it's not possible. In this deep connected state, you can't do it. So I know it's a lot of words, but we need to research a bit. What is that touch? Do I know what it is? Do I stay with, okay, I am touching it, but who? So I is my hand down, right? Because I am touching. So if I'm touching the person here, I am, but still there's I and there's the thing that I touch. But what is the touch itself, right? So the tendency is very strongly to go to a masculine analytic way of touching. And that goes to the extensions of our body, and certainly the upper and outer extensions, right? Fingertips, thumb, eyes, yeah, penis. That's the highest peaks. Yeah. So on our tentacles, we start to touch. If we go deeper inside, if we use our whole body, so the first one was more linear, that would already become more round. The body starts to lose its shape. That's another form of touch. But what we are heading for, what we will need to train is that we stay in this dualistic part of the touch as short as possible. We touch, it's good that you know who it is, right? And that you know where you are, takes you about 10 seconds, finish. Then for the rest of the hour, you don't need to think about that. And we can immediately start to sink in a different state. And in this touch, in this true touch, there is no duality. It's not even the yin and yang. We have approached the yin and yang in an even more at one symbol, being the circle and the point. That comes closer to it. But I think we have to feel it to go deeper into that state. When I sink deeper inside, when I sink beyond the form, then where am I? I'm still touching the person or myself. Not necessarily we go into a higher dimension. Because the way I've used, there's different ways of using the dimensions, in a lot of ways. The way I've introduced it is that the third dimension is the I consciousness, the second is the subconsciousness, and the symbol of the point is an entrance to the unconscious, or first dimension. When we dissolve in this third dimension, this duality, most of the time, we can choose to go out of the physical body and go into the fourth and fifth, and then outside into the aura. But what we are learning is to expand in two directions at the same time. How and why? Well, I don't need to explain that all over again. By not following specifically the light, but by honoring the light and the dark at the same time. In the deep dive, we started from the dark. So we, on purpose, went into the second and first dimension. But the only way to do that is by being at least in the fourth dimension. If you don't, you can go unconsciously in the unconsciousness. That is impossible. Nobody can do that. It's when we drop our attachment to the form in the third dimension, then we start to experience this more subtle layer, which is the fourth, and then with our intent, we bring into the physical body, into the darkness. By training ourselves, we can stretch what we feel much, much further than what we are used to. But for that, we need to use our different bodies. The soul uses the bodies to be, right? But the spirit uses the dimensions to be. And sometimes it's really unclear. If we train ourselves to become aware of the bodies, we can get more and more access in the dimension. A lot of people, including myself a long time, mistake or confuse the bodies with the dimensions. That I can go into my ether body, I feel my intention is now in my ether body, right? But that's my experience, that's the part of the ether that resonates with my shape. I can also, I forget my ether body, and I connect with the ether in the field around me, everywhere. Two different things. Same I can do with the psyche, same I can do with the noetic body. That requires training. The only thing we cannot do that is the physical body, because that's quite clear, it looks like. This is my body, but that's just a shape. When we go into the darkness of the body, we start to feel the same dimensions that create an interconnectedness. Certainly if we sink into the first dimension, and you have all experienced that. So there is then your physical body, which is this is not my physical body, it's the shape of my physical body in the third dimension. But it's an access, it's like a portal. Each of our bodies is a portal through the different dimensions. And I repeat, the soul uses the body to live in, to manifest itself. But the spirit uses the dimensions, because the spirit is completely formless. There's only intelligence there. Okay, let's do a little meditation, right? We're starting to get saturated a bit. And in the meantime, we're gonna then see if something comes up about the talk I just had, and if you can blend it in the meditation. Or we can look at ways how we hold ourselves in the dualism. Everybody of us does that. It's in a lot of spiritual teachings, it sounds like this is bad. Duality is great. It's fine. But you have to use it in a very good way. It should not be your state. It's something that you accept. There is. And you have to know that you're in duality. If you don't know that, and we see that as your state as unity, then we have a serious problem. So consciously going through that duality and resolve it, that is what we can do. If we do it in our meditation, then in touch will become also much easier, because we use the same things there. Okay, let's start with our good old temple. Do this for the first time, feeling like for the first time. Never did it before, never gonna do it again. This cleaning of the temple. Be in it all by yourself. Open the lower path. Connected to the earth. The space below you. When we're in that space below us, we don't need to call it earth anymore. And then go further on. Connecting your earth center with your center of beings in your heart soul space. When you do the temple, it's already a very good way to become aware of touch. Through touch. Not picturing the hand. Not picturing the body. Just having the sensation of aliveness that comes up in different places. It's better. When there's no hand, no body in your mind, there is no touch. Now it can become movement. But in movement, there is still some picture. Oh, can make this movement pure experiential. You feel the energy. Now the duality starts to disappear. And opening our heaven center. Starting from our earth center and going up. It's unavoidable that you will get a picture of yourself again if you're changing. That is the impulse to change what to do. It's okay. Do it very shortly and then sink back. If you see the hands. So you go from thinking, observing from a distance, to two guys touching each other, both hand and body, to the movement energy. To pure sensation that is in all of you. or totality somehow. Then sit still or just or lay down if you want. If you're sure you're not going to fall asleep right away. Just sit. Don't, you're sitting like this for the first time, remember? And we do the same thing. There's still anybody watching. So now we do the same with the mind and the body. The mind does it a little bit differently. Wanders off, interprets, but it's the same duality. You don't treat the mind with the mind. You keep the body open and hold the thoughts in the consciousness. Not focused. Like an ink drop in water. Water is the consciousness. The ink drop is the thought. The pool, the pond is the body. The ink drop is no problem. It's an illusion. There is no trying to deal with it because it's an illusion. While you're in this state, just stay in that state and see which of the parts of the second part of the text that resonate with you. At this point, you can lay down. I think that will bring you in deeper relaxation. But we just continue our meditation, we just add some things into it. Bring your hands in your belly, softly touching. And first become aware of the one who is touching. The one who is touched, but we have already greatly dissolved that. If there's remains of that, let it go. We use the consciousness of the soul and the body as this open space where illusions cannot hold ground. Then you can rest your hands if you want. And see if you still have remains of time. The setting course. Course is already gone a long time. The room. Consciously let all of that disappear. You know it will be still there when you come back, that you choose to be somewhere else and to take the duality out of your touch. So let's practice the two ways. First, the one that we know very well from the deep dive. That's by sinking into the darkness of the body. Using your out breath, the gravity, the stillness of the mind. Sink into the at one with the earth. Of the great heat. Suddenly your out breath is like being absorbed. Become aware of that. Breathing out, not air coming out of your nose, but you're breathing out in another great body. Give up your need to perceive something there. Something else than your consciousness, which is self-sufficient. No need to put something extra. Let the shape of your body also disappear. If you start to see the light, relax deeper. Let go of that need to see. Even if you see it, let go of that picture, of that light. That is like the light when looking up deep in the ocean and you're deep in the water. That's the light on the surface. The mind needs to become absolutely still. Let the shape of the body dissolve further. Let the holding on of the mind go. Is your body shapeless now? Is the separation between your body and the great body below? That separation gone? Can you perceive the light now with your body? Now, if you keep your attention to that light space quality, you might be able to feel it also beyond your physical body. Just stay very relaxed, don't try to do anything. Sense what happens now in your aura or in the fields around you, since you don't have a shape or hardly any shape. That space light that you picked up in the depths of the earth is not different than the one around you. And now let's see if you can bring or trace that light back. You don't have to push it or something, just follow with your intention so that you can bring that light back into the darkness of your body. It can be done instantly, just with your intention. Now from that state, so detach your body and try to do it as still as possible. What you most likely will feel is that the state is most likely getting weaker by doing this. And that has all to do with the fact that the hands are touching the body. So we go back into the state of duality. We're changing. Let's experiment a little bit with that. Put your hands on the, okay. Put your hands on the floor. Now listen carefully for this one. Now your hand is the receiver. So we turn it around. Normally my hand was touching my face or body. What if your face was touching your hand? Find a way to do that as relaxed as possible. And it's very important that you don't move your hand. Keep your attention completely out of your hand. The shape of it. Or you could do it with your leg. The hand lays down with my knee, with my leg. I touch my hand. And I invite my hand, which is very young. I invite my hand to stay in that yin. Now the knee would be like the face before. There's easily, there will be a tendency to reach out through your fingertips. Let that go. Also your arms, your shoulders, make sure they are completely relaxed. We do this to learn to turn around this duality. You can go in any direction. It becomes more a whole body experience. Or what if we would do it with the back of one hand touching the other? Back of the hand is a little bit less sensitive. We're not used to it. We don't give a hand with the back of our hands to another person. We're not used to use that. It gives a very different sensation. Then again, watch if your hand and your arm stays relaxed. The tendency will be, and I also feel that a little bit, is to tense your arm. Because the arm and the hand wants to do something. It's actually the mind wants to do something. Now see how we just play with this. But what is sure, the hand is the receiver now. That needs to be one hand or maybe the other, it doesn't really matter. You don't want to train the hand, you want to train the mind, the eye. You will feel it, I can feel it as now, once your mind and your instinct, the wanting is inside. I just experienced touching every time different parts of your body. Doesn't matter how, with your foot you touch your other leg, with the back of your hand you touch the inside of your other arm. Doesn't matter, but stay out of touching with your inside and the fingertips of that hand. And see if you can keep touching. And now, letting go of the one who's observing this. The one who's seeing this. The third one. See if you can drop all the pictures. And sink into the experience of touching. Every time you see the shape of where you're touching, which is a product of the mind, the eye mind, it's a picture it sends you. Clarifying duality. We don't need that right now. There's only touch, only one. I think you will notice that there's only one touch. There's not two touches even. So stay with that. Now let the body take over completely. Needs to be done. Maybe nothing. The other component of doesn't need to be two parts of you touching each other. It can also be you touching the floor or your arm you feel moving in your sleeve of your jacket or your shirt. Sink deeper into the subtlety. When we do that, it magnifies the experience, the depth of the touch. And then it stretches out in the depth of the great body of the earth, but also in the sea of beings, beingness. And gradually, in the next minute or so, let's start to come back. But not really. I mean, back in our body of shapes, but staying in that state, of course.
verslaan bij hen. Dus.
Couldn't hear me? Is that right? You are muted.
Vraag nog eens.
Was it difficult to hear? Impossible to hear? Or no, okay. On the edge. Sorry about that. I hope you picked up most of it. Most likely the recordings will be okay, right? Yeah. We try to find other technical solutions for next time, but right now we're a bit limited, a bit late for that. Do we have possibility for questions? Sharon? Let me know if there's any questions. Maybe you can type them. Or is it not easier to say? Oh, no, we don't see everybody.
Speak.
Better to speak. Okay. If you have a question, please let us know. Or you would like to share something. Shortly, because we stay in that state.
Bea, you can unmute yourself.
Hallo. Dus je vertelde dat je degene die ontvangt. Nee, sorry.
Bea?
Yeah?
Can you speak in English?
I don't know. It's difficult. Yeah. Sorry.
No, we will translate. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Dus Dirk, je vertelde dat je dus energie kan opvangen als het nog resoneert met jezelf. Dus de ontvanger, dus iets die er vrijkomt, als het iets resoneert met jezelf, kan je het nog opvangen. Maar is het ook andersom, dat de ontvanger die bij jou komt, iets van jou kan opvangen?
Yeah, that is possible, but it's not so much about the meditation that we did. I'm happy to answer that. I would like, for now, I'm happy to answer your question later, but I would prefer to stay into the state that we are in now, if that's okay.
Okay.
There's another question here from Raquel. I think it's pronounced that way. For her, it's difficult to come back.
Don't come back. That's the whole thing. Don't come back. I'm always there in that state. So that is the whole training, that we accept duality and we live in this three-dimensional duality, which was, well, some people tell us that is the problem. It is not. It is our getting stuck into this third dimension that is the problem. And then we try to escape it by going to higher dimensions, but then we become really wobbly, right? So what we tasted, at least, is that you, at the same time, you sink inside and you expand. Because if you don't expand your consciousness, first you can't get into the experience of space, into the darkness. So it happens at the same time. You go like this. And that is perfectly possible while still feeling your physical body. So you don't need to come back, but you also don't, it's important that your mind does not take over in that other place. Like, oh, okay, that's my new reality. No. We have expanded. The old place is still there, but now you have much more possibilities. So no need to come back. In the beginning, it will be like, oh, how am I going to do my work or whatever. It takes training, I must admit it. But with training, it's even more effective to be in this state. But give yourself time to learn that, because it takes time. This is like a training, like you would go to a fitness center to reshape your body. Well, now we are reshaping our bodies on the inside and the outside. So that's quite a workout, although it's very relaxed. It's also retraining a little part of it is retraining our nervous system. Certainly. Have you felt that it was challenging to touch, for instance, your face, your hand with your face, and not to... Have you felt the wanting in your hands? Anybody felt the wanting in his hands? Maybe I was the only one. But this is so strong, this stuff. And it's very... That's why I mentioned the penis as an extra part there. It's so deeply connected. And it's okay if you feel it, but then if it relaxes, it becomes round, and if it becomes round, then it can become spacious and empty. And in the duality is always struggling and suffering, and in the roundness is a feeling of a well-being, let's put it that way. The others? No?
Justin is saying that he was touched by the sensitivity and wisdom of the back of his hands.
Ah, yeah. Nice, nice. We limit ourselves so much by giving this one opinion, you know? This is quite a similar opinion. It's a certain part of the brain that uses a certain part of it always is connected to a same instinctive experience in the body. If we start to change that by touching also differently and becoming sensitive in our whole body and also our other bodies, then our reality is expanding. Then life becomes super much more rich. Not necessarily intense. There is more intensity, that's for sure, but you have more bodies and more alignments to experience it, so that's fine, it's in balance. Once you and your body can, so once your body and the earth start to resonate together, you become, well, you might fall over, but your stability is much, much greater. So you can handle much more. Right. Good. We have, if I go back to the text, then the third until eighth line was about the ways we got trapped. And I think we moved through that. The one who's observing, identifying by being touched and not by the touch itself, and so on and so on. Many, many ways of trying to keep up this duality. And please remember, what I could feel that worked pretty well in our session of today is the picture of the drop of ink in the pond, right? I could feel that worked very well. Because once we start, when we want to try to get rid of the drop, that's the thought, then we create more thought, then we create more focus on that, and that is the problem. There is too much focus, so these thoughts appear without you wanting it. If you keep the pool open, then there is no problem. Even if you have a lot of thoughts, then you accept that, but you keep your consciousness and your body open. So to be aware of our attachment in the moment, to know any time where we are, even if we are suffering, or even if we are in pain, or to stay conscious the whole time, to use your full potential, your body, soul, your mind. That is really important. More important than trying to change that conditions, which we sometimes cannot, because we have to go through it. Then we come in that third part, when I say, because in pure touch there is only one being, one I. No you, but only I. Being, one being. Being. No, I take that for later. If you could experience that at a certain point, this duality, let it be you touching somebody else, or your hand is touching your arm or your belly. If you can relax much more in the pure experience of touch, not trying to bring them together, but to have the experience of touch itself, then the two start to meld together. Now, does that mean that the I is gone? No, the I is even more present. That is the whole miracle of it. In this first sentence, remember, it proves that I am. Who is this I? I is the divine consciousness. It's a divine consciousness itself. There is only one I anyway in the whole cosmos. And you're experiencing it. When you use it through touch, it becomes an embodied experience that is so unique about it. And that is why we love it so much. It's a possibility to direct experience the divine. And then in that state, we realize that there is no other being. There is no other, there's no two hands in this touch. That is the two that are kind of holding, inviting the experience to happen, nothing more than that. When we look at the word being, it's an interesting word, and we have a native English speaker, so please correct me if I get it wrong. But I would say being can be seen as, I think in English it's called a noun, but also a verb. Is that right, Justin? Yeah, okay. Wow. That means a be word, but also a do word. I am a being, right? And we are being together in this class. That's we are, although I must say the do word of being is not very much, right? It's maybe the word that is the most passive of all. But how can you be? It's quite, you cannot do anything. We have to undo stuff, and then we are, then it's being. But it's interesting that the state and the action is the same. When I say being, one being, the being, the first one is like the active, which is also still just presence, but it's manifested. And the other one is the being itself, which is more yin, which would be more, this would be more the vitality, and this would be the light, right? So being one being resonates with this I am also. If we do that when we touch somebody else and we invite that presence in our touch, we kind of overrule somehow all the barriers that we for ourselves, but also the other person puts into directly experiencing this I am state. There is an immense longing for this being one being, but also an immense fear. Because what about me in my life then? That all seems to disappear. That's not going to disappear. But a lot of illusions, of course, in that moment are stripped away from us directly. The at-one-ment of that state is very big. But we have heard about it by experiencing this through the outer bodies, opening the third eye, opening the crown, and then you have a God experience and you almost die, but in the end you're fine, and in the end you're a new person. Okay. And that's a bit like being hit by lightning. Some survive. So I'm not advising you to go out in a thunderstorm and take your chances or something. If we go through the earthly body and through the great yin, it becomes another thing. We just have to take then it's not less intense, but the process in itself is also much more yin. And you can be sure that this is going to happen, what needs to happen also on the other hand, but in a more direct way. So the process seems to be more gradual than, but that's not maybe right. It happens through the sub and unconsciousness. So we don't have this awakening of consciousness. It's something happens on the inside that the mind cannot grasp, and you're changed. I don't know if anybody of you recognize that, but I had many of these. Just spent 14 days in our cave house, and I'm doing some internal work for myself where I quite strictly keep in a certain state. Well, all kind of stuff has just changed, disappeared, and there was no process. There was a process of my body, or like this cough and all kind of stuff. I can see all kind of effects. But there was not something the old self needed to adjust and all of that. No film or movie of the old that changes into the new, just the new appearing. So that's more from the body. That is why I believe when we do it from the body, this change is more natural. So being is the touch of life, the eternal touch of God. More and more I have sunk into a state where I feel that I'm constantly helped. I don't mean the God as I think you know that, as the creature on the cloud up there, but God as the one, the all and the void at the same time, is holding us constantly. You are being touched right now. The fact that you are is the touch of God. There is like a constant billions of points where we are touched, even that holds us together. And that happens through our different bodies. The more we get aware of that sensation, it is this soft tingling you can have like after a meditation, or like a current that goes through you. This is the touch of the divine. It's not different than when you touch somebody else. It's just another, you could say, super being or non-being touching you. But it makes all the difference if we experience that. It makes all the difference if you constantly feel that you're touched and carried by the divine, of course. Something I deeply wish for everybody, but at the same time, by being in what we are doing now, touching somebody else, we help people to have this experience. They often cannot describe it, what happened, thank God, Otherwise, it would probably spoil it. But there is like a deep place in themselves that they've been now, where there's much more at home. And that is what counts. So, what we're going to do now is another hands-on session. I'm going to do it on the body. Okay. Telephone making strange noises, that's right. So you can do it on yourself, or if you're with the two of you, then somebody can lay down, the other person can touch. It doesn't really matter who. See if you can touch yourself or touch the body that is in front of you, but not coming from the I mind, not coming from your fingertips. Completely forgetting the shape of the body, and that before that there's even knowing who it is. We have an it, that will be the touching, the toucher, and the one who's touching. If you use your hands, do the same thing. It's important that you don't know who that is. I mean, if you use your hand on yourself. I will use most of my text because it's hard. It doesn't work to do it in two ways. But this meditation you can use later if you repeat it on somebody else. It extends on the previous thing we did while we were laying down. So I forget the shape of my body, forget the shape and the name of the other body. And there's already touch with the back of my hand, also touching myself, my own body. But as soon as the picture comes, I let it go. What comes up is, and I'm only telling this because we are in this class. What comes up is a wave into my body. And I pay totally no importance to that. But it's there. It relaxes something in me. It naturally expresses the touch. In that touch is not that the two are not there anymore. They are so in at one moment, but they are still completely themselves. Maybe you can't see it, but it's more like the back of my hand touching. Then I feel there was like a little bit of tension in my shoulders. Even if pressure appears, no pictures or letting it go right away. I feel with my face or third eye touching the ether body. A lot of light coming inside, but I'm not, I accept that. But again, not starting to think about it. But sometimes you come in these unexpected encounters, like my knee is also touching somewhere. And there was totally no intent in there, but it was important. So my mind is getting more and more still. Every time is to notice where you create duality. What I was doing, I was kind of following a certain flow, and that flow was starting to diminish, and I was still following it. So we need to be precise. There's no assumptions. Oh, that's why it's going. Yes, in that moment. And if the palms or fingertips are involved in this process, that's very sacred tools. If they're an integrated part of us as a soul being. Now the separation between this body below my hands, body that I'm touching, separation between this body and the earth is disappeared now. Earth. This darkness and light at the same time. Now here's a picture and see I have to follow. I know I made like it looked like a jump, but it was this shape was already there. It came up 3 times. Now I'm just following it. So the body released partly the tension. Part of the memory of the tension she couldn't release is still in my arm. So when I move the arm, which wants to move, gives her the possibility to further explore it. Because it kind of surprised her. And it was like very difficult to breathe. And part of this tension is released. It's like a very old, crampy fear inside her. We got to totally without any intention, just by being in touch. Now, I don't have any intention in doing this or any plan, just a natural expression of what is. It's what we're learning. And being in touch by making this unity between the two. Now it starts to release. Now the stress pattern goes back into the subconsciousness and more open state appears. The important to know in this is that I'm not doing this. I'm receiving, I'm very present, but I'm receiving just as much as the other body here, the other being here. And that is what gives the power. And there's also no attachment to it, because it's complete in itself. So there's all kind of stuff that happened here. Very sensitive still, and it opens something in her. As you can see, it's the movements that are coming up. Sharing these things is, with you is very important. We've been treating our own body, but also other bodies in the way, in the same, the almost desperate way that we need our modern lives. If we can use this embodied presence as a base, most of what we are working for so hard is happening through us naturally. We still have to be there, of course, but much more becomes possible. As well, as much as possible, as precise as possible, describing what I do, but I'm sure you can pick up wherever you are part of the stage that we are doing it from. And that is essential. The virtues, when we touch in this way, the virtues always start to radiate from the body. Many of us, because we're not really being what we are and doing what we should be doing, we can only do that by shutting down a lot of our sensitivity and all kind of parts of our mind and our body. Once the soul, body, and mind come together, there's no choice. That is what fears us also. It's the only way out of the confusion. And eagles fly, whales swim, and humans being, consciously being, in their unique way. So you don't need to find that out anymore. It's also what I wrote in the last sentences, reminding us why we are here. If we go deep in this unconsciousness, it's not what I want, it's what I am. What I am, I start to express them naturally, because I often say that to people, I know nothing else than what I'm telling you, and I'm nothing more than what I am right now. So that if that's not what you're looking for, fine. Because there's nothing else here. That makes it very simple. It's part of it. And then there is no struggle. That's the last sentence, living the oneness in duality. You're not troubled then by the obstacles and the lessons. That is the whole setup of the game. We are oneness beings, totally in the unity with God, dropped into duality to show, well, how much you got. If you're really this divine being, then okay, show it. And then we can have all kinds of choices often, because there's only one way. It's only one being yourself. But there's a billion ways in not being yourself. You can become a pig, or a plant, or whatever. Many forms. That's the confusion. It's mistaking the beingness, all these different possibilities, not as a field, the circle, but there's just one point. And that's only you.
Raquel has a question. Does the client need to know at least the basics of what we are doing, touching, or just accept what is happening, the touch, the feel?
It's good that you talk with the client about it. And, share some words with it, but not like warning or something. But it's good that you talk a little bit before. Yeah. But what will happen if they are not ready, if they're not open for this, then it won't have any effect, for sure. But when they come to you and you share a bit about your experience and what it does to you, what you have experienced, then that's enough already. And then you can see if they are like, oh, attracted to that, would you like to experience it? You don't have to be too therapeutic, clinical or something. Talk about it, you see, oh, sometimes you see the blinking eyes. That's it. So to keep that very simple and natural. I would say. Very simple. Okay. It was quite a journey also for me. Are there any more questions or sharings? It's quite a heat we have built it up also. I don't know if you can feel that, but it's kind of chilly in the beginning, but now cooking. So Alchemy or Bodywork, please, if you have, just jump in if you want to have a share or ask something. But in the meantime, I say something. Yeah. So typical for the Alchemy or Bodywork is that you, instead of going from technique or different layers of the body and so on, that you start from the point. We use the physical body and the darkness to do that. And then those of you who are attending the training also, then it expresses itself in the 5 elements, the very fundamental building stones of life and how it creates nature from there. Still extremely simple, containing everything. Well, some of you might not agree that it's very simple, and that's because some of these elements are not, you are not trained, or you have not learned how to use these elements. So they might be sleeping with you. And that's the feeling then that we have like, oh, this is difficult. But everybody has these 5 elements strongly. The deeper we are in that oneness state, the more spontaneously we can follow what wants to be expressed and stay still.
There are some sharings from Ronald and Becky. There was a lot of fire this year.
Yeah.
And Justin also.
Maybe they can tell it. Justin, would you like to share something? It's better like this, I think.
Yeah, I want to share something. Yeah, I felt a lot of fire first in my heart, and it really to stay with it, to stay in the fire. It was a really good experience from that. So don't go with the fire, but be in the fire.
Right. Great. Looks good.
Yeah, but it was also a little bit uncomfortable.
A little bit what?
Uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable. Yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah.
Not really a yin experience, actually. No.
Yeah. Great. Well, the tendency is the fire is strong. We're same with the sexual energy, but and other things. If the mind is strong, then we tend to start to focus on it, but we don't really realize it's a way to distract it. Then it already goes out, but we need enough space to contain it. It looks like that worked pretty well now.
It was an intense experience.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Justin, you had something?
Yeah, following the Wood Week, for those who weren't there, I just did the Wood Week. I've really physically felt touched by the field of intelligence. And that's a form of touch which I have felt very clearly, and I also felt this evening. And yeah, that's very beautiful. And I realize and feel it really helps me personally sink more into my body.
Right. Great. Happy for you. Looks good. Okay. That was great. I enjoyed to be with you tonight. And good start we had. Please take it with you in your own way. You certainly good to listen to some parts again. I could feel at the level of the touching, there was quite some inputs that is kind of different than what we used to have. But go and research for yourself, and research and train yourself also in the way, like accepting duality. That means like, if I touch, oh, I feel that. If you don't feel that, you have a problem, right? But how long do I keep this separation? Also, if I meet somebody, how long do I keep this separation in my way of looking, my way of thinking about, or can I just be with it? Can I be in touch? Because the training now is to be in touch and to notice, and that's why I talked about myself sometimes. Oh, I feel tension in my shoulder. Oh, I stayed a little bit too long there, because it's a constant process of adjusting. It's not like, oh, I'm on the flow. No, I was on the flow, but then the flow changed to here. You see, there's no assumptions. It's a constant training that we get if we're in this state, in noticing in how we want to control it. I want to be part of this. That's the I mind. And he sits in the trunk or something, but he can join the ride, but he cannot speak up. So that gives you something to do. In daily life, it works very well, but also, as I said, try it out on people, because it's helpful for you and for others, and just to enjoy it. And during the night, you wake up, place your hands, sink through the bed, feel the spontaneous movement, and even in the sleep, touching the sheets in your sleep, and in your sleep, and then you go like, that's an example of so much more aliveness that becomes available. So thank you for being with us, and thank you also us to being with me, with us. And we wish you a great night. Thank you. Bye-bye.